Water. It's something that touches our lives in many ways every day, and we count on the fact that when we turn on a faucet, safe, clean water will begin to flow. But how does the water arrive in our homes or where we work? Most water that flows from taps in Pleasant Prairie comes from Lake Michigan. The Kenosha Water Utility draws water directly from the lake through large intake pipes that extend out about 1 mile. The water is drawn into the Kenosha Water Utility production plant. There, it's run through microfiltration units to make the water safe to drink. Small amounts of chlorine and fluoride are added to the water. The Pleasant Prairie Water Utility purchases an average of 2.25 million gallons of water each day from the Kenosha Utility. Every evening during off-peak electrical hours, the village takes in water at a steady and consistent rate. A computerized system monitors and controls the process. It sends a message to the Kenosha Water Utility prior to triggering slow opening valves, which will allow water to flow into the village water system. Large pumps at the Kenosha Water Utility production plant push the treated water through a 36-inch transmission main for about 3 miles to a location on 7th Avenue and 80th Street. At this location, Pleasant Prairie's water utility receives the water through 2 metered pits. The water travels in 2 parallel transmission mains from the 7th Avenue location to a booster station and reservoir on Sheridan Road, filling the reservoir. Large pumps at the Sheridan Road booster station then send the water through transmission lines to a second reservoir and booster station and 4 elevated water towers located throughout the village. On any given day, an average of 9.2 million gallons of water are stored within the village reservoirs and tanks. 2.25 million gallons for an average day's use at homes and businesses, and close to 7 million gallons in reserve for fighting any potential fires and other potential needs. Branching off from the water transmission lines that run between the reservoirs and tanks are smaller distribution mains that carry water to the property lines of homes and businesses. From the property line, a builder will construct a private water line to the village water main, and the village will install a meter to measure how much water is drawn from the system into a home or business. From that point, the plumbing within the home or building carries the water to all the places we expect it to be. Throughout this process, the water utility pays close attention to details that help make the system run more efficiently and safely. The utility has programmed changes into its computer system in order to pump water when energy costs are less expensive. It also pumps at a consistent rate in order to maintain the proper water pressure within your home. The utility ensures that an adequate amount of water is stored in the village system at all times to accommodate large unplanned demands for water, like fighting a fire, without having to unexpectedly take additional water from the Kenosha Water Utility. Pleasant Prairie's utility also performs regular maintenance, like exercising water valves, routinely monitoring water mains, and routinely inspecting the inside of towers, reservoirs, and pumping stations. Pleasant Prairie flushes all distribution mains biannually and checks all Pleasant Prairie fire hydrants for soundness. Since the utility increased the level of ongoing maintenance, main breaks in the village water system have declined from 1 or 2 per week to about 1 per year. By paying attention to the details, staff endeavors to run the utility as efficiently as possible. So why, then, are Pleasant Prairie water rates so high? In Pleasant Prairie, some homes are served by private wells. About 643 homes are direct retail customers of the Kenosha Water Utility, and the remaining homes are customers of the Pleasant Prairie Water Utility. While Kenosha Water Utility customers enjoy some of the lowest water rates in the state, Pleasant Prairie Water Utility customers pay a much higher rate. Pleasant Prairie, as a wholesale customer, pays more for the same amount of water than a retail customer. If the water is coming from the same local source and both utilities have adequate infrastructure in place, why is there such a large difference? Well, it all stems from the history of water in our area. Between 1930 and 1960, Homes took water from private wells and a handful of small, privately owned, well-based water companies. Many of these small companies failed financially or were under orders from the DNR to remedy radium contamination found in their wells. In 1971, Pleasant Prairie created a water utility to serve those who had previously been served by the failed companies and wells. The utility also built 2 separate well, tower, and water distribution systems. In addition, the Kenosha Water Utility extended water service to certain Pleasant Prairie homes that were near the town's border with the city. After unacceptable radium levels were discovered in Pleasant Prairie's municipal wells during the early 1980s, Pleasant Prairie sought an alternative source for safe drinking water. Turning directly to Lake Michigan was complicated by the newly created Great Lakes Compact, requiring that water taken from Lake Michigan be returned to Lake Michigan, and further complicated because Pleasant Prairie had just incurred debt to build 2 new sewage plants that return water to the Des Plaines River, not Lake Michigan. In 1988, Pleasant Prairie, Somers, Bristol, and Kenosha, with the help of the Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, or SEWRPAC, began an effort to identify the most efficient way to provide safe drinking water to a growing community. They created a technical advisory committee. In 1989, those participating were encouraged to plan for a regional-based water utility that would serve all communities equally without regard to city, town, or village borders, and that would be governed by an independent board. The main goal of the regional utility would be to operate as efficiently as possible to get the lowest cost water for all water users. Pleasant Prairie, looking to move its residents off of radium-contaminated wells and also seeking to accommodate much-needed new economic development, began installing new infrastructure to accommodate the regional utility being planned for. As the planning process neared completion, the Technical Advisory Committee made the formal recommendation for a regional water utility. At this final point in the study, the Kenosha Water Utility, however, announced that it would not support a regional utility. The Kenosha Water Utility instead would sell contractual services to the area communities, despite the fact that the SEWRPAC master plan indicated that this would be the highest cost alternative. Pleasant Prairie, having developed its water infrastructure based on the regional approach that used Kenosha's lakeshore intake as the water source, was obligated to obtain water from the Kenosha utility through a contractual agreement. The contractual services approach led to higher rates for Pleasant Prairie. The water history continues as the development of Lakeview Corporate Park was underway at roughly the same time that the water story was taking place. In 1999, Pacific Gas and Electric Company sought to build a gas-fired power plant in the village. The plant would require 6 to 7 million gallons of water per day. The cost of water, however, was too high. The village and PG&E began investigating the construction of a village water treatment plant and disconnecting from the Kenosha Water Utility. The village also considered proposals to buy water from Zion, Illinois. At PG&E's request for a resolution, Pleasant Prairie and the Kenosha Water Utility began to negotiate a new contract in 2001. As their largest customer and a notable revenue stream, the village, in the 2001 contract, agreed to become a customer of the Kenosha Water Utility forever. In exchange, the Kenosha Utility agreed to provide the village an unlimited supply of water and agreed to allow Pleasant Prairie to make substantial water system improvements for increased efficiency, mainly taking water at a single delivery point, the 7th Avenue location, in order to reduce costs. The new agreement also obligated the Kenosha Utility to establish new and reduced wholesale rates for the village, which would be based on a rate study or cost of service analysis conducted after the related water system efficiencies were made. As part of the agreement, both parties recognized that there was a chance that PG&E would not build the gas-fired power plant in the village. Ultimately, PG&E announced that it would no longer construct the facility. However, the fact that PG&E left didn't change the terms of the agreement. In accordance with the agreement, the village remains a customer of the Kenosha Water Utility forever. So here we are today. During 2012, the Kenosha Water Utility submitted a request to the Public Service Commission to raise water rates. This gave Pleasant Prairie the opportunity to contest the Kenosha Utility's request. The Kenosha Water Utility's rate study, also known as a cost of service study, recommends a 34% increase in wholesale rates it charges to Pleasant Prairie's water utility. A cost of service study conducted by the firm of Baker Tilly on behalf of the village indicates that Pleasant Prairie's rate should increase by 1% or even decrease. Here are some of the highlights related to the petition along with their responses. The petition submitted by the Kenosha Water Utility requests a rate of return of 5.5% for wholesale customers and a 4% rate of return for retail customers. The petition further requests that if the Public Service Commission doesn't approve the different rates, that all customers be charged the higher rate of return of 5.5%. The petition states that a higher rate for wholesale customers is justified because retail customers deserve, by law, a return on their investment. Although Pleasant Prairie has always paid a return on investment to the Kenosha Water Utility by paying water rates. As a general rule, rates paid by wholesale customers are typically lower than retail rates because less overhead is required to serve a wholesale customer. This rule particularly applies to Pleasant Prairie's water utility, given its capabilities and its current schedule of taking water. A different rate of return for wholesale customers and retail water customers amounts to a subsidy. When one customer class pays more and another customer class pays less for the same cost item. The 1997 agreement between the two utilities prohibits the Kenosha Water Utility from subsidizing other utility customers with payments from the Pleasant Prairie Utility. The petition submitted by the Kenosha Water Utility also states that a higher rate for wholesale customers is justified because there is extra risk and cost involved in serving a wholesale customer. The petition referred to the Pacific Gas and Electric plant that decided against locating in Pleasant Prairie. It stated that additional infrastructure to support anticipated water needs was installed, and that when PG&E decided not to locate in Pleasant Prairie, the infrastructure went unused. The contract between the two utilities drawn to facilitate PG&E's potential plant in the village made the village a captive customer, the largest customer of the Kenosha Utility, indefinitely, barring any breach of contract. As a result of the discussion with PG&E, both utilities made investments in additional infrastructure. The fact that the increased demand didn't come to pass affected both utilities. Nonetheless, Kenosha has a captive, high-volume customer for life. As mentioned briefly before, the Kenosha Water Utility's cost of service study recommends a 34% increase in the wholesale rates it charges to Pleasant Prairie's water utility. A cost of service study conducted by Baker Tilly on behalf of the village indicates that Pleasant Prairie's rates should increase by 1% or even decrease. Why is there such a great difference between the two recommendations? A cost of service study helps ensure that the utility is charging a fee based on the level of service provided. This helps ensure that customers are not charged arbitrarily, but are instead charged based on the actual service they receive. The cost of service study conducted by Baker Tilly takes into account the impact that Pleasant Prairie's water infrastructure has on the Kenosha Utility. The village takes water from the Kenosha Water Utility through a single 36-inch water main that runs from the Kenosha Utility to the village limits. From this point on, Pleasant Prairie's infrastructure is used to pump, store, test, and distribute the water to utility customers. The village takes water during overnight, off-peak hours at a slow and steady rate, and stores enough water to meet average residential use for multiple days, while still having enough water in reserve to fight fires.
Hello, my name is Doug McElmurray. I'm the fire chief for the Village of Pleasant Prairie, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the Pleasant Prairie water system, specifically as it relates to firefighting operations here in the village. Our system holds approximately 9.2 million gallons of water in a system of water tanks and water towers. On any given day, we use approximately 2.25 million gallons of water for just normal domestic use and industrial use. So to give you an idea, we could, with the 9.2, we could run for about 4 days off of our water supply without taking on any more water and still have a little bit left for firefighting operations. However, that's not the way we normally operate. We normally take on water every day. So the way the system normally works is we use about 2.25 million gallons on average. We have 6.9 million gallons of water in reserve for firefighting operations. When the Insurance Services Organization, or ISO, came and rated the fire department, our dispatch centers, and our water utility, they gave our water utility the highest rating that they have, an ISO rating of 1. We achieved 40 out of 40 possible points. And that's an independent organization that supplies ratings to insurance companies throughout the country. And that would be in hydranted areas. And as a result of the type of system that we have and the ability to haul water to areas not protected by hydrants, utilizing trucks like the one behind me, we're able to protect even areas that aren't immediately protected by hydrants with the water from that water supply system. Maybe to give you an example of how that could work, recently there was a very large industrial complex fire in western Racine County. Over a 36-hour time period, there was approximately 5 million gallons of water used by 80 fire departments that responded to the scene. If we had a similar fire in Pleasant Prairie, we would be able to use our normal domestic usage of 2.25 million gallons, the 5 million gallons for the fire, and we would still have 1.9 million gallons in reserve. And that would be without taking any additional water on. So as you can see, we have a very robust system of water supply in the Village of Pleasant Prairie for both domestic usage and for firefighting operations.
The Baker-Tilly cost of service study takes into account all of the Kenosha utility infrastructure that helps transport safe drinking water from Lake Michigan to the village limits. From the intake pipe that extends into the lake, to the treatment facilities, supplies, and personnel, to maintenance, the transmission of the water from its origin until delivery in the village, and all factors in between. The Kenosha Water Utilities Cost of Service study, however, assumes that Pleasant Prairie as a customer should pay for a portion of all of the utilities infrastructure, instead of just the infrastructure that is used to serve Pleasant Prairie's customers. Imagine the Kenosha Utilities' 3 pressure zones that extend from east to west. Kenosha's study assumes that Pleasant Prairie customers should pay for the distribution lines running to homes and businesses throughout the city of Kenosha, Somers, and Bristol, that they should pay for water towers and public fire protection storage throughout the entire customer area, despite the fact that water for the village is only taken through one 36-inch main in zone number 1. This would amount to a Pleasant Prairie water utility customer not only paying for their own water infrastructure cost, but also for all of Kenosha's customers as well. The village continues to believe that the best way to resolve the matter presents a winning alternative, not just for Pleasant Prairie ratepayers, but for the entire Kenosha community. In both the short term and long term, fair water rates based on the actual cost of service will help attract businesses that are larger water users who are looking to locate in the area. Businesses that are large water users have typically proven to be longer-term members of a community and are more labor-intensive, providing more jobs in a community. It will allow these businesses a choice to locate in any municipality throughout our county. Even more importantly, this would demonstrate to developers and search agents from other parts of the country that the entire Kenosha community welcomes quality growth and cooperatively supports strong and sustainable businesses. Simply said, it makes the Kenosha area more competitive with other regional business destinations. On April 22nd at 10 a.m., the Public Service Commission will hear testimony regarding the water rate matter. While the hearing will be held in Madison, ratepayers, members of the business community, and anyone with an interest is invited to the Kenosha Water Utility location at 4401 Green Bay Road to both listen and share comments related to the testimony. Those interested can also read testimony and see related documents firsthand through a link to the Public Service Commission website located on the main page at pleasantprairieonline.com. More information about the Kenosha Water Utility is available at kenoshawater.org. There you can learn more about the Kenosha Water Utility facilities that help provide clean, safe drinking water to Kenosha area customers, and you can learn about recent utility updates through their quarterly newsletter.